What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. Today's episode comes directly from you guys. We had posted up on Instagram and asked who in the Powerstroke community would you like to have on, and would you like us to chat about performance or an engine problem, and fixes for it or transmissions, whatever it might be. But we wanted you guys to jump in and let us know who you wanted to hear from. And today's guest was tagged several times. We checked out his page, and it's extremely clean 6-liter Powerstroke that he's built up to 1,000 horsepower. So we wanted to learn more about the truck and also the process he went through to take it from the stage it was at when he got it into the power level that he's at now. So there's a lot of great information. If you're a Powerstroke fan or a diesel enthusiast in general, there's going to be something for you in this episode. We're going to chat about things in the industry, parts supply, tons of different things. So make sure that you stay tuned. Before we get to it though, make sure you head on over to our Discord. You're going to see a code up on the screen right now, or you'll find a link down below. It's completely free to join, and we've got a ton of great builds and a lot of information and ways that we're networking. If you listen to the podcast, you want to chat with myself, other podcast listeners, there's so many cool builds that you guys post on there. I can't even name them all off. There's Cummins, Duramax, Powerstroke, there's swaps, there's things you guys are working on to fix. You just get a truck and you're running into a problem with it and you'll post up, and there's just so much information there. So make sure you head on over, make sure you join. Also, you're going to find a link to our Patreon down below. Our Patreon is important because it helps us grow. It helps us stay out in front of different topics that are going on in diesel and automotive. It helps us get better, at what we do, helps us stay independent and be able to cover diesel from, an independent perspective, and be able to touch on different topics that, some of them might be controversial. There's a lot of things with emissions and things going on where, we can jump right in and cover it, or talk about a particular build, or talk with a particular person. So there's some really exclusive perks that our Patreon members have. It starts as low as $3 a month. We appreciate the support for those of you who have done it, and want to encourage you, if you want more from the Diesel Podcast, want more information, episodes you're not going to see anywhere else, questions you want me to ask a guest, we don't post them on YouTube, podcast apps, anything like that, you'll find them on Patreon. All right, let's get to today's episode with Tyler and talking about his 6-liter Powerstroke build. Tyler, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I was really excited last week on Instagram. I had posted something up for our listeners and followers and said, hey, who are some Powerstroke guys that you want to hear from? And you were tagged more than once, and I clicked over to your Instagram page, and I'm like, man, this is one of the cleanest 6-liters I've ever seen, and it makes really good power. So I'm excited we could connect today and chat about your truck and learn more about it.
I appreciate the invite, and I will be first to say that I am by no means the smartest guy in the industry when it comes to these trucks. I am a small fish in a very big pond. There's some, I believe you've had Mr. Charlie Keeter and several other guys on here that make some big power and have put down some impressive numbers. So I'm just kind of following their lead and kind of extending what I've learned and what I know about the platform just to people who want to be a little more informed about it.
What I love about chatting about 6-liters is it's such a vibrant, passionate, enthusiastic part of the diesel industry, or the diesel enthusiast crowd. And whether it's been like Jared at Kill Devil Diesel, or Charlie at KC Turbos, or Charlie Keeter, or had Jared from Holder down on before, yourself, there's just so much passion and excitement around it. It makes me excited just to hear about it. And when I was on your Instagram page, I'm looking at the pictures that you have, and I know we'll get to where people can follow you and stuff towards the end, but it is an absolutely beautiful truck. And I know that every build and every project has a starting point. When did you either see this truck and kind of fall in love with it, or what drew you to the 6-liter platform at the start?
Actually, my first vehicle that I ever owned was an extended cab short bed 2003 6-liter. Long story short, the truck was about 4 hours from home, found it on Craigslist, went to look at the truck, and it wouldn't start, wouldn't run. The guy was asking 10 grand. And my dad had drove down there with me with a gooseneck. We were ready to take it home. And I offered the guy $5,000, and he said no. And my dad and I both agreed that it was just too much money to pay for a truck that didn't run. So we came home, 3 weeks later, man, it ended up in my possession, and long story short, the Fickum was what was bad. I fixed it for $100 and I drove the truck for about 3 years. Doing small modifications along the way, nothing crazy. I was a teenager at the time and was trying to make big power with it. Things never worked out with that. But inevitably, somewhere around 21, 22 years old, I found my green truck on Craigslist, seen the truck, called about it. It had already sold. A couple years down the line, probably 2.5 years. At that point in time, I had a 03 Cobra Mustang and was trying to figure out what I was going to do with it because I got it as a basket case. And I wanted to get back into a truck, but I wanted to get a fast car, and I couldn't really make my mind up. And at that point in time, I had already connected with who's now the previous owner of my truck. We became really good buddies. We ended up striking a deal, and the rest is history. I chased that truck for 4.5 years, man, and somehow the stars aligned, and I ended up with it in my possession. So
it's it's always really kind of fascinating to just see what draws somebody to a particular vehicle. And it's like, I think it was that color green what really initially captured me with that truck, because you don't see that green very often. And like the wheel and tire setup you have, and it's just like visually just draws you in. And then I know there's a lot done under the hood with power and things like that. So when you got this truck, you did the deal with the the Cobra for the truck. What did you have a particular power number in mind, or like a build list, or things you wanted to do and you just like methodically went through that? Or was it just I want 500 horse, I want 600, and then next thing you know it's at 1,000 plus?
Well, honestly, initially when I got the truck, it had 190/75 conventional injectors, and it had a stock VGT charger on it. So the truck was far, far, far over fueled. But I mean, for what it was, it made good power. And I mean, it moved down. It was definitely a red light to red light sleeper kind of deal. And inevitably, with any other build, regardless of diesel, gas, whatever it is, it snowballed quickly. I owned the truck for literally a week, and I pulled it in the driveway and started tearing it apart. I made some phone calls. I called Larry at SoCal Billet, said, "Hey man, I'm looking for a S400 setup. I'm going to need all the charge pipes, everything. I want it to be a true bolt together setup. I didn't want, because at the time I didn't have a welder in the driveway and all that good stuff. So I needed something that I could literally bolt together." Immediately took the truck to 250/100s and a 467. Made it 3 weeks. Transmission decided to completely disintegrate internally. Left me stranded about 3 hours from home, so I had to have it towed, which was an expensive bill. But got it home. Ended up with Sam Wise at Wise Auto. He built the trans for me. Got the truck together. Ran it hard around town for probably about a month. Beat a couple guys in some Duramaxes, couple Cummins, couple Mustangs, things like that. Just small daily driver builds, so to speak. And long story short, one night, me and a Duramax went to run. The night that we went to run, he split his block completely down the middle. And once we got his truck loaded on the trailer, I went to run a Mustang, and I blew a head gasket that night. So that kind of aligned the stars for me to take the truck and go into it for what would be the third time, and about 3,000 miles. And got with Jared at Kill Devil, ordered a whole bunch of parts, went through the truck, actually got it completely assembled. And I had elected to not change lifters because it was such a new build. And when I completely assembled the engine back together, I went to rotate it over and found that I had piston to valve issues, and pulled it completely back apart, found that I had a lifter that had hydraulic and completely seized. And that's what led into the entire full build from the oil pan up. And, here we are 2.5 years later. I built it in an absolutely dirty ass paving asphalt shop. It's funny, people joke about what 1,000 horsepower engine builds look like. And, it shows a clean engine room. And it looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. And the reality is I was building it in something inevitably putting pistons and rods together and putting them on the ground, spraying them off. That's not what I done, but I've seen a picture floating around. It just makes the joke. So it's just funny all these years after, I've probably put somewhere around 15,000 miles on this build, and every event that I've ever taken it to, I've driven the truck to the event, raced it, done my donuts, burnouts, whatever the case was, and I drove it home. It's never left me stranded since I'd done the complete engine build, top to bottom, front to back, and refreshed the trans. So
that's kind of really at the core, I think, of what diesel performance is. I know there's that level of 2,500, 3,000 horsepower, and that's really cool, but I think the majority of us are in that exact kind of lane you talked about, where you can drive it to an event, drive it to the drag strip, go have fun with it, and you're driving it home, and to be able to put those miles on it and really enjoy it day to day is what is so cool about these kind of builds and how they come together. Now, when you were chatting like with Kill Devil Diesel, and you're saying, hey, was it like, I'm shooting for this power number, I need these parts to be able to do it, and getting the injectors for it? So like, where the truck's at now, is this ultimately where you wanted it, or are you thinking about taking it even farther in the future?
I'm kind of jaded about the idea. To be perfectly honest, I actually based this entire engine build off of a truck that Jesse Warren, if anybody who follows him or knows who he is, which I'm sure there will be a lot of people who know, but his crew cab short bed truck that he took to UCC several years in a row, that truck used to be a stock bottom end, with nothing but 625s, O-ringed heads, a lot of fuel and a lot of air. And I basically built this truck kind of mimicking that setup. When I initially built the truck, I actually used the same size injectors he had. I think this was like 9 or 10 years ago. That truck made right at 950 horse and somewhere around 1,800 foot-pounds of torque on a completely stock bottom end, aside from, rod bolts. And I looked at that, at this point in time when I was researching all this, that's when all the forums were big, CompD, Powerstroke.org, Powerstroke Army, everything. And I kind of went to the core of it and was like, that's a proven setup. That's what I want. And it kind of led to that. I did kind of veer off to a couple different parts or different avenues, if you will. The truck, it's honestly been about everything I ever planned. I mean, I knew going into this that I was going to have a little more lag. Obviously, there was going to be some more smoke. It wasn't going to be a stock truck by any means, but I was looking for good, usable, clean, so to speak, power. I wanted it to be as clean as it could. And the truck has went honestly above and beyond. I mean, if somebody had told me when I started this build that I would be able to say I had a 850 plus horsepower 6-liter that I could daily drive, take on road trips and this and that, I would have laughed. I mean, I've been in the industry long enough to know, back in the day, 190-100s and a stock Charger, you're doing big stuff back then. Yeah. And, I think at the core of it, the industry, no matter what platform it is, between tuning and hard parts, and just kind of the camaraderie that comes between working with other vendors and working with other enthusiasts, we have learned so much about the diesel engine platform in itself and being able to make good, usable, and streetable power that, we're in a whole different age, man. This is really awesome times for the industry.
You had mentioned earlier when you had called SoCal Billet about wanting something you didn't have to weld together. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that, more in general. Do you think that that's what's allowed, regardless of what platform it is, people to be able to take these ideas of, I want 800 or 1,000 or even more power and be able to do it themselves because the manufacturing and the design and the engineering is so precise now that you can get a whole turbo kit, you can get all this stuff, and you don't have to weld it and cut it and have these other kind of skills that maybe 10 years ago you did need to have that?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I'm primarily Powerstroke based, but I've followed the industry for years. I mean, I've got diesel power magazines that date all the way back to '05. So looking at just the transformation over the last 17 years, when you can go, like you said, 10 years ago, it wasn't as common to see 900,000 horsepower plus trucks. Patrick, are you there, buddy?
Yep, we got you back.
I'm sorry, man. My phone just cut off out of nowhere. Spencer from Fast Fuel Systems was actually calling me. No, 10 years ago, it wasn't common to see 800 plus horsepower trucks running around town and just, cruising to events and stuff. And like you said, it comes down to manufacturers now. Their processes have become so repetitive, and tolerances are so tight, and the aftermarket market in itself has grown so large. There's guys that can now get on the internet, click a couple buttons, order $15,000-$20,000 worth of parts, and bam, they've got a truck that's busting off 11-second quarters, and they're driving it to the grocery store and taking the kids to the lake with the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so cool how everything has advanced and moved forward with the industry, and it's something that, again, 10 years ago, I don't think many people thought would even be possible.
No, not even in, like the Cummins world, 1,000 horse was like a huge deal. And now it's just
Yeah.
And same with the Duramax and the Powerstroke. So it's been really cool to follow it. I'm a lot like you, that I have magazines that go back to like 06, I think, 07. Just to see where it's gone. And that's why, when people were tagging you on our Instagram post, it was just, it was something that pulled me in. And these are some of my favorite episodes to do, or, when somebody has a project in mind, they tackle it and they're happy with the truck. Cause a lot of times I'm guilty of this too, is I didn't really have a set plan, or when I got to the point I thought I would be happy, I wasn't happy. And then I had to kind of backtrack and redo things. And so it sounds like your build, you had a solid idea of what you wanted to do, got it there, and you're happy with the truck.
And ultimately, I'm happy with my build. I have went through revisions of the truck itself, but it's been very minute things. And again, I contribute that to OG guys in the industry. You talked about Jaren earlier, Jaren Holder, Reichenholder, Jesse Warren, Charlie Keeter, Charlie Fish, Jared Alderson. I mean, all these guys who have been pioneers, not only for the industry itself, but specifically our platform. I mean, those are the guys who have really paved the way and made it possible for end users like myself to be able to have these trucks. Because without those guys, it wouldn't be possible. And I could go on and on. There's so many more vendors and so many more names in the industry. Just everything from shops themselves to private individuals who just had the knowledge, the want to, and the drive to fabricate things and do them themselves. It's just really cool to sit back and look at the whole grand scheme of things.
Now, as far as any other builds, are there some other, maybe projects you're thinking about doing? Build another 6-liter, maybe a 6.4, maybe a 6.7.
I actually, just about a year ago, I purchased a single cab long bed, another single cab long bed 6-liter. I can happily say within the last week and a half, I sold the truck. Long story short, somebody followed me on Instagram. He lives out of town, but he's currently working in my hometown. And when it snowed over the winter time, he hit me up and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So we ended up meeting up. We met up, cruised around the snow, just done donuts, all kinds of stuff. And we since became really big buddies. And I had the opportunity to purchase one of my customers' 6.4s. And I told Owen, I was like, hey, man, I want to sell this single cab. If you want it, now's the time to buy it. So he ended up purchasing the single cab from me. I since picked up a extended cab short bed 6.4 Powerstroke. I've got some plans for it. I don't want to let cat out of the bag yet, but it does currently have a Maryland Diesel S400 set up on it. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but I do have plans for the truck. I just acquired it legally as of yesterday is when I acquired the truck. So it's been a whirlwind of stuff here lately, man. Everything's changing.
I want to ask you because we do get some of our listeners that'll ask about 6.4 sometime, and I know this episode is heavily focused on the 6-liter, but when you're looking at one, say to buy one, what are some things that you would suggest somebody looks at if it's an 08 to 10 6.4?
I think this goes for both 6-liters and 6.4s because they're so close. Some of the parts will interchange, especially rotating assembly stuff. Both platforms are so close together that, one of the major things is obviously head studs. For anybody who doesn't know, both on the driver and passenger side head, the very front stud on the bottom side of the head, you should be able to see that regardless. Now, unfortunately, there are other people out there who have shied the industry and they'll only put the outer studs in, and I unfortunately have seen that with some of my own customers' trucks. But the biggest thing is if you can see those front studs on both sides, you're usually good to go. Again, I one out of every million you might see somebody falsify a stud job. There's just too many problems that could entail doing it incorrectly. Regular maintenance, honestly, the first thing I look at, whether I'm purchasing a truck, whether I'm working on a customer's truck, I want to know what kind of maintenance has been done.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, and this doesn't go for just Powerstroke platforms, everybody wants to make power and everybody wants to go fast, but nobody wants to spend the money and do the oil change or do the diff service or brand service because it's expensive. I went to Rocky Top Diesel Shootout 8 in my green truck, and when I came back, I spent $1,300 in filters and fluids doing a full service on the truck. And that was me doing the work myself. It wasn't cheap. And to most people, they either can't afford to bite the bullet, or they don't want to because they think, well, I can put this part on and I'll make more power, or I can do this and it looks better. But they forget about the livelihood of the truck and the regular routine maintenance that is required, especially when you start modifying and making more horsepower than a manufacturer intended a unit to make.
That's some really good advice, because I think whether it's a relatively stock truck you're towing every day with, or it's a build like your 6-liter or what you might do with your 6.4, is doing and maintaining it, especially, under that, it's 3 times the power, 4 times the power of what it was stock. And it's not just the oil. It's like you mentioned, the axle fluid, the transmission fluid, all that stuff.
Well, and like my 6.4, I've sworn for years that I would never buy a 6.4. Just some of the reputation that they've acquired over the last few years. But the gentleman I purchased this truck off of, this truck's spotless. He's got every service record as long as he's owned the truck, every receipt. And at the price point I purchased it at, for me, it was a no-brainer. I knew that I was not going to replicate that in another unit, no matter where I went.
And with 6.4s, I just thought of a question, and it was somebody was looking at one. I think they posted it on our Discord, and he was looking at one. I don't remember the mileage on it, maybe 150, 180,000. And this might be my ignorance, when it comes to 6.4s, is when you have valve train issues or piston issues, is that guaranteed you're going to have one on a 6.4, or is it something where somebody was really hard on the truck and you get into a cracked piston, something like that? Because I think a lot of potential buyers think it doesn't matter how it was treated, how it was maintained. It's going to crack a piston. I'm going to be 12 to 15,000 into a long block, and so I'm just not even going to look at it. Or is that just, like I said, my ignorance of 6.4s and not knowing?
I don't think there's anything to do with ignorance there. I think again, it kind of gets back to routine maintenance. You have, and this goes for all big three. You got trucks that are built on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Yeah.
Those guys that came in on Wednesday, they really wanted to come to work, and it's a joke, it's just, you have trucks that are absolutely and just immortally beat to death. And then they reach a point to where they're almost ready to kick the bucket. They're still running. You're going to have thousands of dollars in repairs. And unfortunately, some of these people pawn them off to other end users. And that to me, I feel is like what gives any platform a bad name. Being a mechanic myself, I've seen Duramax, Cummins, Powerstrokes, LLYs, LBZs, 5.9s, 6.7s, third gen, fourth. I could go into a whole laundry list, but I've seen all three have catastrophic engine failure. And personally, a lot of it comes down to just poor maintenance. So again, you can have a truck. I mean, I'll be honest, my 6.4 was by no means babied. The previous owner is again another good friend of mine, and has became that way through being a customer. And he showed me all kinds of videos, running this thing on the rev limiter, doing burnouts, racing trucks. But I knew that the maintenance came with that, and the truck came to me running and all these other things. So I wasn't worried about it. That's really, I think, for me, the biggest thing as far as these trucks go. And unfortunately, things like the 6-liter platform, there were so many of these trucks made from 03 to 07 and the Super Duty chassis itself, and they continued into the E-Series van chassis through 07, 8, 9, and 10. They were still putting 6-liter Powerstrokes in 2010 vans. So there was such a long, drawn-out list of these trucks and platforms that were made. They became so cheap now for people to pick up and drive. You get teenagers that just want to, unfortunately, blow some smoke on people, and these trucks end up beat to a point to where it costs more to repair them than the truck itself is actually worth.
Yeah, I think it's kind of mind-boggling a bit to think about the production numbers, especially of Ford, and how many, GM as well, but just how many trucks they put out every single year, and they have these long runs, and there's millions of them that are still out there. So it's not like, people aren't building 6-liters or aren't building 6.4s or 7.3s or any of that. It's just these massive amount of trucks that are out there. And yeah, I think that's really good advice that you gave as far as, trying to understand the maintenance, or trying to get that from, a previous owner, and just see what's been done. We've covered it on the podcast before with different companies, just how important that is to do. And, these trucks are getting kind of expensive. I think the other day I was just browsing locally of, hey, what kind of Super Duties are out there? Can I find an L5P? Can I find a 6.7 3,500, truck? And I can't find them. They're all either in transit, or there's literally nothing that are on these dealer lots. So it kind of changes your focus a little bit to, okay, well, do I want to pick up this 6-liter, this LBZ, or this 5.9, and just, I think there's a lot of attention, that's there with it right now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I had to step out so we can actually talk a little more. Yeah, and I spoke to one of the guys at ARP the other day, and we were talking about I needed to place an order for some studs. We got to talking about just how far they are on back order, and he said, again, I don't want to quote this, I don't exactly remember, but he said something along the lines of they were like 400,000 studs behind. And I got to doing the math on that, and I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, well, 16, 24, 32, going doing the math. And I'm like, man, that's thousands and thousands of trucks.
Yeah.
And to think about the amount of trucks, not only stateside, but globally, who are needing some of these products, it's like you said, it's almost mind-boggling at how many units were actually produced and what platform and how long that run was. It's almost unfathomable for most people.
Do you think that some of those supply chain issues, which I know we hear about supply chain like all the time with every single part of the economy, but do you think that's holding back some builds that are out there right now, where people are just, maybe they're focusing on the maintenance of this new truck now, and they're kind of waiting for, studs or turbos or injectors or any of these things that might be affected, to come back in stock. And then there's just going to be a huge push to build these trucks.
I absolutely do. I have a good customer of mine who has a 6-liter Powerstroke, who has had his truck on the dyno numerous times. We've went through different air and fuel setups. The truck, after you push 70 plus pounds of boost for so long, he's having head gasket issues. And we kind of went through the do's and don'ts, what we couldn't do. And he's like, I want to build an engine. I looked for a set of connecting rods for probably 2.5 months, and I couldn't get a set of them. It ultimately pushed him into, he bought a 2019 Aluma Duty King Ranch truck, and he's got his 6.0 probably sitting in the field or in the shop, behind the house, whatever, and it's just sitting there right now because we can't get parts. I actually came into the point now to where some things have came back in stock. Because I deal with this in my day job, when something, let's just say product A, goes on back order for 7 months, you start freaking out like, okay, well, I'm going to order 50 of these things so that when they do ship, I'm going to have an overabundance. Well, now we're kind of getting into that. Okay, these suppliers are fulfilling some of these orders, and now that stuff's coming back into stock. But again, we're going to run into another point of, no, you can't get rods, or no, I can't get a cam. No, this gasket's not in stock. I mean, I ordered main and rod bearings for a customer, and it took 8 weeks. And that was stuff that typically, you could go to a local auto parts and buy Molly bearings.
Yeah.
So we're in a really, really weird time right now as far as, any kind of build goes, whether it's, again, diesel, gas, any kind of internal combustion engine. It's just a super weird time to be building something.
Yeah. It's so hard because I can't think in my lifetime, you could always get stuff, or it was like, can I have it tomorrow, early AM delivery? Oh yeah, absolutely. You can. Here's the price for it. And then you get it by 9 AM.
Yeah, let's overnight it.
Yeah. Let's overnight it. And now it's so different. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that, are going to want to check out your 6-liter, check out, the 6.4 as you start to reveal the things that you're doing with it. Where can people follow you on social media? And then also you'd mentioned YouTube as well, and a channel that you have.
Yeah, so I've got my own YouTube channel, which is actually as follows: Tyler's Diesel Stop. And I also have an Instagram for Tyler's Diesel Stop that follows with my YouTube channel. And then people can also follow my personal page, which is Short 6 Slow. That came from one of my Cummins buddies. His funny story behind that: his son's 14 now, but at the time he was probably about 10. And he come riding down the gravel driveway one day and slid his bike up, and he looked at my truck. He's like, "Whose 6 Slow is that?" I looked at this kid and I'm like, you don't even have a you don't even have a permit. You're talking crap and you're riding a Huffy. So, I don't know. It just kind of stuck, man. And it's funny to look back at things like that. At the time I'm like, this little shit, but now, that kid, he's super awesome. He's super supportive. David and his son, Jaden, we've been to the track together, and I've had issues with my truck, and they, they're Cummins guys, and they hop in, guns blazing, wrenching on stuff, helping. And that gets back to the camaraderie and the kind of friends and relationships that you can culminate being in this industry.
Well, it was really cool to chat with you today, and hear the story of not just the truck, but some of the other things we chatted about, with how to, find a 6.4, how to find a 6-liter, some of these other parts. And I can see, your passion, your excitement for it. And I know that's why, people tagged you. So it was really cool to connect with you, learn more about it. And I'm definitely going to follow and pay attention to the 6.4 build, and also that green 6-liter, because like I said, there's not many that are that color. And so for those that are on, are watching on YouTube, they're going to see it right now. So I definitely encourage, if you're listening on a podcast app, to go follow Tyler, check out his Instagram and YouTube, because you definitely have to see the truck.
Well, I appreciate that. That's I think what ultimately drew me to the truck was the color. It's a very, I'm not going to say rare, but it is a limited production. They only made these in 03 and 04 in this color. They were King Ranch and Eddie Bauer edition specific colors. So I knew that, anytime I seen one, it was kind of special. It was out of the ordinary. And I had the chance to snatch it up, and it wasn't my first choice. I like black vehicles, which is what my 6.4 is. And that's pretty much every other vehicle I've ever had has been black. Whatever reason, man, this was the truck. That's what everybody knows me for. And as non-conceited and humbly as I can say it, I appreciate everybody who has tagged me, everybody who follows my YouTube and my Instagram and all that. It's very humbling to know how much support that I have received from other people and throughout the industry, from other vendors and stuff. Specifically because of this truck, man. This truck has changed my life, and some people who aren't enthusiasts would never understand that without being in the car community or truck community. But this thing is a big part of my life. I've posted it for sale a dozen plus times, and for whatever reason, Whistling Diesel actually offered to buy the truck. He was like, "Man, I will PayPal you right now." And I was like, I couldn't do it. The truck's such a big part of my life. It's one of those things I'll probably have forever.
That's one of the really cool parts about doing a podcast and chatting with enthusiasts all over the country is what you just mentioned right there. No matter what brand it is, what engine's in it, what power level it's at, there's a connection to it. And I think that's why, when we had posted up, people were tagging you on there, and it's because of that impact that you made. So I appreciate your time today, Tyler, sharing your story. Look forward to seeing what you do in the future with this and other trucks. And it was, really cool to chat with you.
Well, I appreciate it so much, and I think if there's anything that I could leave this podcast and video with to just tell anybody who's either purchasing their first diesel or has their truck, trying to build it and trying to get into something to make big power, it's taken me 10 plus years to achieve what I have with this truck. And I am by no means done. I am by no means the fastest guy, but the truck makes me happy. At the end of it, you have to do what makes you happy. And I think in today's society, we all look at the social media platforms and go, "Man, this guy has this. I've got to have that." And for some people, and including myself, it's not attainable at the moment. But use that as fuel to drive you forward, to express a different side of you that you may not have expressed otherwise. Don't wish your life away. Things come with time, and great things come with time. And that's where this truck came from. Again, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me on here. Thank you to everybody who listens to the podcast, watches the Diesel podcast on YouTube, watches my stuff. I mean, this is an industry that is forever going to grow, I feel like. Again, 10 years ago, we were a very small, tight-knit community, and we just continue to grow. And I think that's a positive thing.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to our Discord. You're going to find a link down below for that. I want to see you guys over there. I want to see pictures of your trucks, things you guys are doing, questions you might have. I may not have the answer, but I can reach out to someone in the industry, get that answer for you. Or there's a incredible wealth of knowledge from the members that we have there, where they might have had the same problem with their truck or doing the same kind of build, and can give you their experiences. I also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Texas Diesel Supply, Wrights Diesel Services, Kaleb, Tyler, Loewen from 23 Diesel, and all of you that support us, not just on Patreon, but also Discord, also listening to us on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the podcast apps out there. You guys have kept us going, for 6 years. And I remember when we first started this podcast, somebody said, "Hey, aren't you going to run out of topics? Like, how are you going to be able to do a year's worth of this?" So we're on year 6, and it's because of you guys. It's because of your enthusiasm, your passion, not just for your trucks, but the industry in general, for parts, for trends, and just, we thrive off the energy you guys have. So we wanted to thank you guys for that. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.